Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime series where we add value to people's lives, happening every Thursday at 12 on ebuzzradio.com. You can catch the Lunchtime series on all major podcast channels and in the marketing and leadership segment. Joining me as per usual, marketing and communications expert and co-host Craig Paisley. How you doing, Craig?
Hello, Kevin. Yeah, great. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Again, can you hear
Yeah,
me?
thanks.
You're good.
Yeah, good to connect after last week's stimulating conversation.
Yeah, I was just before we climbed on air, I was like, I wasn't following the script really. I was just rattling off on my own, but it was a really good conversation, and we had some amazing points that came out of that. With that, don't you want to give us a quick summary to the listeners that sort of missed out on last week's conversation? Really,
Uh, uh,
really good points.
yeah, thanks, Kevin. I must admit, I did enjoy the conversation. I'd like to reference one of the articles we reviewed last week, and it was the article published by Angela Cadbury's, which was titled 10 Leadership Essentials for 2022. And we learned the following. First essential we learned was about sharpen your future leadership skills and obviously understanding, what needs to be done in bringing the right kind of leader and the right number of leaders into organizations. The second point was about harnessing emotional intelligence, something that is still lacking in many businesses. The third is becoming that feedback expert, and this is very much along the lines where you've discussed before about the mentoring and coaching mindset. The fourth point is about growing tomorrow's leaders today and really getting to understand what the objectives and challenges are for the future and ensuring that they're being nurtured and mentored right now. The fifth is to invest in capabilities. Constant learning, evolution, business is changing, technology has brought in a whole new realm on how businesses operate. The sixth point is nurture employee well-being, something that is really risen up the ranks of importance in businesses coming out the back of COVID and the challenges that we've all faced. 7, row like a crew. It's all about teamwork. 8th point is generate an inclusive workplace, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and as we often add in the sense of belonging. Embed the practices is lesson number 9. And number 10 is just remember those lessons. And the more you embed the practice, the more you can understand the lessons, and it's this iterative process. So in closing on those leadership essentials, Kevin, it's also worth noting the article could be read in conjunction with the other interesting article that you actually presented a few weeks ago, titled 5 Leadership Strategies for Thriving in 2022. This article was published by Mike yesterday, and there's some great parallels between the two articles, and some of those concepts are really enhanced and can be used to become an effective leader. And those are the key takeaways from last week, Kevin.
Fantastic. Thanks, Craig. So I know that we have an interesting subject coming up today. So what are we going to be chatting about today?
Okay, Kevin, yeah, I came across a really interesting report that I'd like to discuss today, especially as we haven't really touched on the segment of business that has necessarily been focused on previously. And this report is produced by the Hinge Research Institute, some great publications coming out of Hinge Research Institute, and it's titled the High Growth Study 2022. So just to set some context for our listeners, Kevin, and referencing their websites, the Hinge Research Institute is a division of Hinge, who is a leader in branding and marketing for professional services industry. And as I say, we haven't really touched on the professional services industry much in our conversations. And Hinge is based in Reston, Virginia, USA, and the Institute is dedicated to achieving one goal, and that is to understand what drives exceptional professional services growth. Unfortunately, they published their findings to help business leaders learn how to thrive in any market.
I'm glad that we're actually going to cover this, because I think exceptional professional services, the way that conversation itself is, I think that's a game changer in, part of, especially in big corporates today. You look at people selling the same types of product. And they're trying to outprice each other. They're trying to be the forerunner. They're trying to come up with the best product. But at the end of the day, when there's exceptional professional services that's sort of embedded and ingrained in the culture, it's very difficult to beat a brand that does that.
Fantastic. And I just love that you bring that point of view into it, because I'm actually going to, challenge you on some of the insights you can share on the learning you've had with these kinds of companies and your teachings. But what drew me to the report, Kevin, is, it's termed an executive summary, is the study looks not only at what is working today, but also how the fastest and most profitable firms are addressing 4 key topics, namely technology, talent, strategy, and interestingly, and really great to see, marketing. And we note from the report that the fastest growing professional firms have definitely achieved consistent growth and prosperity over a continuum period. So, yeah, when looking at the leadership articles we've covered recently, there's really great alignment with the principles covered in those articles, and especially in terms of the technology, talent, and strategy components. So, yeah, really excited to unpack that in further detail.
So can you provide us with some insight into what the report was conducted, or how this report was conducted, and what the structured to the address?
Yeah, Kevin, absolutely. And as with any study of significance, there has to be an approach and methodology, and obviously a specific target audience for the study. So the study covered the following. It looked at industry composition, from accounting and financial services, government contracting, technology, consulting services, architecture, engineering, construction. Great to see that in there. And law and legal services firms, and nice to see a broad spectrum of audience as well. So about 31% of 32% of the companies reviewed were micro firms that had less than $1 million turnover per annum. 22.4% had between $1 and $4.9 million turnover per annum. The mid-sized firms, 28.5% of those, 5 million to 49.9 million, and 17.2% of large firms, 50 million turnover and above. So a really nice stretch, and over 1,150 firms participated in the research study with a combined revenue of 216 billion, and interestingly, almost 1.9 million employees across those respective firms, Kevin. Again, what's great to see here is Africa is represented in the study. I'm really pleased to see that they've done a broad spectrum across regions. Just over 60% focus on the USA. Obviously, yeah, we would expect something along those nature. Africa, 12.3% of the audience in that particular area, and a beautiful spread from president, CEO to business development managing directors to technical professionals, which is important, to owner partners, really important to understand their points of view, marketing managers and directors, and then senior executives and vice presidents. So a really great spread across the marketplace in getting to these kinds of insights. And then, the other great thing that comes out of this, Kevin, is some of the insights that came out of setting this framework here is that the high growth firms are defined as having a compound annual growth rate of 20% or greater over a 3-year assessment period. And interestingly, about 1 in 3 firms in the sample actually earned that distinction. So really encouraging to see that 20% compounded growth over a 3-year period means that there's a lot of companies getting it right out there. And what really stood out here is that the high growth rate firms actually grew over 3.5 times faster than the average growth peers. And that in itself is actually quite an important point to note as well. The growth, 31.4% in high growth for micro firms, 24.7% in growth for small firms, 26% growth for mid-sized firms, and 17.9% growth for the large firms, 50 million upwards. So really, again, the takeout here is any size company actually has the potential to be a high growth firm. It's not just the expectation of those larger firms with the 5, 10, 20, 40, 19 million turnover per year. It's really an enablement of any firm focusing on those 4 key principles consistently over a 3-year period, actually, being able to participate in this particular space.
Craig, what period was this done over? Was this done over in the last couple of years? Did COVID sort of
Yes.
affect the numbers?
So yeah, Kevin, that's actually a really good point. So this is the seventh consecutive report, and it's looked at 3 years, which would then be now currently 2022, back 2021, 20, and
Oh, wow.
commencing
Okay.
in 2019. So, you know, I think it tells a really good story then, because it would have covered a lot of the angst and findings coming out of COVID and some of the challenges. And that's why within those four principles, I think, the understanding of the importance of marketing, talent, really come to the fore because of the informed decision making coming through the likes of COVID, etc.
So, Craig, so for example, Leadership by Design, my business, would that be considered or represented in this report?
Kevin, from an industry sector and company size point of view, most definitely. As to where you'd fit in relative to performance against your competitors, I haven't seen a micro detail breakdown relative to the subset in consulting, because HR wasn't mentioned as a separate entity. It's clustered in the consulting space. But
Yeah.
remember, you provide an important service to a number of companies, teams, and individuals through your leadership and development coaching. And as such, your business would actually fall clearly into that consulting space. And when one talks about talent and leadership, I think you'd actually have an important role for the respective companies across those various classifications. But looking at the industry comparison section in the report, we note that technology and software remained the growth leaders in professional services firms again this year. Expected, absolutely expected. COVID fast-tracked all tech developments, and those companies that were playing in that particular space, technology and software is the absolute enabler of good business moving forward. These companies were followed by consulting, the entity that your business would fall into, then accounting and financial services firms, then law firms and legal services, interestingly, government contracting, and lastly, the architecture, engineering, and construction firms. And if you look at it, technology and software grew by 13.5% over that, at least. Yes, the median growth rate was 13.5% over that period for software tech, and consulting 11.89. So good to see double figure growth for the majority of the firms in those classifications, Kevin.
Craig, I mean, just with regards to being in that consulting sector, I think, my business in itself has grown quite a lot, specifically because we've moved from in-person environment to remote, right? For me, there's been quite a large growth in my business, and also from nationally to internationally, which sort of I can see how that would fit in here. And what's interesting though is that there's such a wide variety of the industry sectors, from technology all the way to architecture, engineering, even law and legal services, right? That's not something that usually comes up when we when we talk about these kind of stuff.
Yeah, correct.
But
Yeah.
is there anything you have noted with the professional services firms you provide services to?
Yeah, Kevin, I think that as an independent as well, playing into the particular space and working with the professional services firms that we engage with, I think the one key thing that really, in fact, the two key things that stand out is the marketing, the big focus on marketing, and the introspection that's coming about from a lot of these professional services firms, and understanding the challenges that they've been through COVID has forced them to reconsider who they are, what they do, how they do it, and spend a lot of time and effort now repositioning their businesses and marketing themselves. So, great to see that. I think they still grapple with the people aspect of hybrid and really the challenges of trying to understand the right talent mix in that regard. But most definitely, every single one of them understand the importance of technology in their makeup moving forward. But yeah, most definitely the importance of understanding marketing and sales automation.
So Craig, what are the key advantages that these high growth professional services firms have over others?
Kevin, there's a number of advantages, and that would work across the pillars that we spoke about of technology, of talent, of marketing, and obviously of strategy. But I think, suffice to say, just a couple of points on each one is that the high growth firms have much more mature automation strategies across their business processes, and that obviously allows for a much more seamless integrated proposition, which hopefully in turn translates into a good seamless customer experience journey as well. That level of automation maturity is definitely reflected in the use in the marketing and business development technologies. A lot of sales automation coming to the bear in that regard. And they got the biggest advantage in core business software, because that's at the heart of supporting everything in their service delivery. And the workflow process automation is actually the number one topic that most of the firms want to learn about this year. And that's really great to see, because they're understanding the importance that technology will play in moving them, moving the dial with them. But the excellence in marketing and sales support really is a key advantage that they have over the general businesses out there. The firm's also more frequent users of business development tracking technologies, and really just ensuring that the pipeline is always ready and full, and activity is at the highest level there. And the more detailed tracking of marketing is enabling them to understand where they need to be focusing, which obviously helps them drive more profitable engagement with their respective clients. Moving on to the likes of talent, I think this is really an important place where you'd be able to add some good content here as well, because the high growth firms have much more highly skilled talent than their no growth competitors, and that's for a number of reasons. One is obviously high growth, so they've got the budgets and enablement to attract that talent and actually have the investment opportunity to put a lot more of the learning programs in place. And they're also able to look outside of their organizations and bring great consultants and freelancers into the business to plug the areas where they may have gaps in their mix, Kevin.
Yeah, Craig, I think hiring skilled talent is so important. I think we've chatted about this before. And I think also it lends itself to that whole value component and that whole culture component, right? That if you're not hiring the right people for the job, you're definitely going to see it in the bottom line. You're definitely going to see it, show up where you don't want it to show up.
And they clearly understand the importance of the marketing and business development, so they're putting a lot of effort and investment into those particular areas. And which then just leads me onto the pure play marketing conversation here, where marketing investment is similar across the high growth and no growth firms, but the high growth firms are outperforming their peers because they understand how to use those technologies and deploy them in an effective and efficient way. A piece that we talk about often here is content, and this is something that with the companies we currently working with, particularly in the B2B space, content creation is a top marketing priority for businesses, and even more so for high growth firms in 2021. And one of the key differences here, Kevin, is that the high growth firms are using those marketing techniques more intensively, and they're really looking hard at what it is that's actually driving growth in their environments. And the 10 most impactful high growth marketing techniques that they're deploying, 7.3% of these are providing assessment and or consultations. The second point really key here is they're really leveraging keyword research and search engine optimization. They're spending a good deal of time in live product and service demonstrations. They're conducting and publishing a lot of original research. Public relations machine is very active in their respective areas, and obviously with a key focus on earned media. They're nurturing prospects through not just the online environment, but the telephony, traditional telephony route, and the call center approach that we spoke about 2 weeks ago. They're speaking to targeted audiences at conferences and events, and this is really something that can't be overemphasized, is getting to understand who your audience is and targeting the communications specifically to that audience in that particular time and mode. Marketing partnerships with other organizations, there's always an opportunity for the co-branding, dual branding, collective supportive spend approach, and presenting in educational webinars. And lastly, still at 6.5%, networking on social media. So really, it's make sure you consider where your clients search for the answers to business issues when addressing these respective areas for driving highly relevant content, Kevin.
What's interesting, Craig, is that this marketing segment goes hand in hand with servicing and professionalism, and I mean, it's one of the conversations we've had with the big brands that do have the budgets, how they've turned up the marketing even through the COVID period. They've actually added to their marketing spend, and haven't shied away from that. And it's quite, I think it's quite interesting that those two, marketing area and the professional sort of element to this conversation, are both hand in hand working together.
And I think, a word of encouragement for the business, again, irrespective of the size, that want to play in that high growth space, is just understand the 3 high impact marketing techniques are the keyword search engine optimization proposition, conducting and publishing original and relevant content, and highly effective, well-managed, relevant networking on social media, Kevin. The professional services firms generally used to struggle with SEO, but the high growth firms are overcoming that because, as I mentioned earlier, the investment proposition there, and through that they've been able to achieve these higher levels of SEO maturity relative to their competitors. And what is interesting, obviously, the high investment really working the SEO capability, you're going to see a much bigger funnel of lead generation coming through that particular approach, and obviously that leads to much more higher profitable clients walking through the door, Kevin.
Craig, but just on that point about, back to the marketing with for example, with Gary V. Gary V, he outrightly just says, like, if you're a 45-year-old real estate agent and you don't have a TikTok account, you're probably at the bottom of the market right now, because the person who does have a TikTok account and you're a real estate agent, you're probably kicking ass, right? And it's a case of really shifting, like, what we're doing and how we do business, right? Because I think we have to pay attention. I mean, I don't know if you've seen recently with Instagram, they've changed their approach, and they directly want to obviously be in competition to TikTok. So they've changed their key component to sharing conversation or sharing information to their reels, right? They have their reels in competition to TikTok, which is interesting. It's like they're making a marketing move.
What's interesting there's, I think the jury's still out on that from an Instagram point of view. I actually read an article yesterday on that very particular approach, and there's a feel that Instagram haven't yet got it right. So let's see if they're going to step away from it and just let it be, or if they're actually going to step more into it and become more of a TikTok than actually an Instagram, because it's quite a different approach to what the original proposition of the platform was. But again, the critical thing here is just understanding how to create that content, what are the best channels to get it out in, and just have somebody manage it and make sure that it's constantly relevant and refreshed. And that takes time and effort, whether you outsource that to a great digital content creation and community management agency, or whether you try and set up teams internally. It's a dedicated role that needs to be worked every single day, Kevin.
Absolutely.
The last point there is strategy, which I think a bit of an obvious statement, but it's worth mentioning again, is that high growth firms are less challenged by many of the factors in the strategic level that the no growth or low growth firms are experiencing, and growth is primarily organic. Even though the high growth firms are more likely to have gone through a merger acquisition a particular year, the large firms focused on their strategy, and they're really focused on understanding what some of those future challenges, what are the challenges for the next 3 years, Kevin? And when you build the business and understand how to look forward, and it talks much into that point around, build your future leaders, train your future leaders, understand where their business is going, understand what the anticipated business challenges are for the next 3 to 5 years. So it's about unpredictability in the marketplace. It's about increased competition from larger competitors. It's about downward pricing pressure on services. It's about automation and financial, at least artificial intelligence. And it's about a decrease in demand for your services and ensuring that you're always repurposing and staying relevant. And high growth firms look into the future to better understand the evolving needs of their clients and ensure that they stay visible in the places that clients are searching for the solutions to their businesses and challenges. And obviously, going back to the technology aspect, SEO enables that and helps them rise up the search ranking. But the critical thing here is it's not just a crystal ball, it's really understanding how to approach each of those points that are to be considered as prospective business challenges moving into the future.
Yeah, no, Craig, I absolutely agree. I think, especially with being able to stay agile and, providing that repurposing that you speak of, you have to be strategic enough to think on that. And how do you, as the brand, stay adaptable and changing and from a micro enterprise, it's about collaboration. Who can you collaborate with, and how do you leverage services from each other to kind of move forward? And so yeah, I absolutely love this. And so, Craig, on the takeaways for us today, as we close the show, what can you share with the listeners as the key takeaways of today's conversation?
Kevin, it's absolutely essential for professional services firms to focus on the 4 standout points that we mentioned or that were noted in the reports. If they have any intention not just to remain in business, but actually sustain the high growth status, that they need to excel in these challenging times. And the points again were noted as follows: workflow and process automation is a key area of focus. Strategy, value pricing, and digital transformation continue to gain importance. Marketing budgets need to increase. And then again, we've spoken about this a lot, not decrease, especially as global growth is constantly waning, and it's expected to slow even further. So competition increases across all sectors, and it's really important for the businesses to ensure that they don't dial down the marketing spend and actually lose relevance and significance. And lastly, in that particular point, customer experience remains the critical enabler of success for high growth firms. But in closing, just to really look at the 5 specific areas referenced in the report that signal where brands are achieving success. These are noted as number 1, the battle for talent is taking center stage. So whilst the high growth firms do have a small advantage in existing skill sets, they have found a way to expand access to top talent through, as I mentioned earlier, outsourcing, and this will definitely give them an edge when it comes to talent. The second point here is technology is definitely driving growth and profitability. The high growth firms have higher levels of technology maturity enablement, and they make greater use of marketing and multiple technologies to optimize their performance. The third point is marketing really matters. High growth firms execute their marketing strategies more effectively, which results in greater impact from the same techniques. And they also have an edge when it comes to digital strategies, such as the SEO and performance tracking. The fourth point is a different strategic focus. As I mentioned, look at what's driving the future of business. They focus on the future, new ways of adding value and improving efficiency compared to other firms who are more worried about their competitors and dealing with eroding margins. And then finally, there is a new normal. High growth firms accept that uncertainty and rapid change are the new normal, and they actually know how to leverage and adapt and be adaptable in finding opportunities for innovation and profitable growth. And those are the key takeaways from this incredible report, Kevin.
Fantastic, Greg. I love that. And it gives us some insight that even through the pandemic, even through the trials and tribulations that so many businesses have gone through, it has forced a bit of a change in mindset, a change in strategy, a change in, how else can we do what we're doing. And there is growth. There is growth happening, even in the face of everything we had to endure in the last 3 years, and which speaks true to what's possible as for businesses out there.
The importance in this is just to understand that it can only be achieved through structure and ruthless consistency. You cannot get into that growth space if you're not adapting to adopt any of the points that we've discussed today, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Guys, if you want to catch the Lunchtime Marketing Series, the Marketing and Leadership segment, at least, that's going to happen on eBiz Radio at 12 o'clock every Thursday. And Craig, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for very insightful information. If you want to check the links out, guys, go to the YouTube video, and you'll see it on YouTube under the Lunchtime Series. And we post all the information there, and it's always there every week. Craig, thanks for catching up with us, and I'll see you next week.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Have a great week ahead. Cheers.
You too. Cheers. Bye.